Kepler College is one of the oldest, reputable astrology schools in North America. We have one of the most comprehensive, award-winning educational programs with more than 60 faculty members offering live online instruction year-round. Get ready to celebrate 25 years of quality astrological education with us. Kepler College teaches a wide range of astrological techniques, history, philosophies, and disciplines for all levels, from those who are curious seekers to dedicated students and seasoned practitioners. Our instructors possess outstanding astrological skills and wisdom, from fresh, innovative voices to established leaders in astrology. Many of our diverse faculty have worked in the field for decades. When you enroll in Kepler College, you join a strong international community of peers and future colleagues. Our program provides a strong foundation for professional practice, postgraduate study, or self-understanding. After studying with Kepler College, many of our students evolve from learners to leaders, establishing their practice and making meaningful contributions to the astrological community. Chart your course in astrology today with Kepler College.
Now, let's bring on Patricia. Patricia Rogers has over 45 years of experience in astrology, beginning her studies when astrologers manually calculated charts, which really wasn't as far back as you might imagine it was. Just think of when computers came in. Throughout her career, she balanced her astrological practice with leadership roles as general manager and marketing director for a major shopping center in Southern California. She was also featured in radio, cable, TV, and newspapers, where she shared her popular cosmic clock astrology forecasts. Now retired from corporate life, Patricia is a professional astrologer and owner of Party Queen Psychics, a business providing astrologers, numerologists, tarot readers, mediums, and other intuitive practitioners for corporate and private events. In 2017, she authored Relationships, Compatibility, and Astrology, a practical guide for people new to astrology to understanding interaction styles with each sun sign. Patricia currently serves as Vice President Education for Kepler Astrologers Toastmasters, where she supports astrologers in developing their communication and leadership skills. She's passionate about making astrology accessible, relevant, and empowering for people from all walks of life. For more about her work, visit patriciarogersastrologer.com. Thank you, Patricia. We are really looking forward to your presentation.
Well, thank you, Donna and Lori, for this opportunity. And I do want to echo thank you as well for being the founder of Kepler Astrologers Toastmasters. As you said, the only Toastmasters geared for astrologers in the world. So that says something. And we are a lot of fun meeting every week. 2 or 3 years ago, when I was first starting to sit in on these free webinars and I heard about Toastmasters, I joined right away. I said, I need to hone my skills if ever I want to be offering a webinar. I can tell you it's not only got me here today, my inaugural presentation, it's also helped me in my practice, in consultations with people, presenting and really representing astrologers as professionals. So this crosses all types of appearances and functionalities that I might do as an astrologer. So without further ado, I do want to say that I almost changed the name of this webinar today because Dwads is going to bring up some controversy, awesome, and it's also going to give us an opportunity to play a sort of a game I coined. It's not really a game, but I'm going to call it Yes, No, Maybe, and Never Say Never. We're going to play that later on in here. I do want to state that we will be using whole signs. Dwads is a medieval and earlier than that Hellenistic technique. So we are going to use the whole signs. And I do want to know, and Lori, if you can check some of the responses, the beginners we have, intermediate, and advanced. This webinar will really speak to all 3 levels. And if you are a beginner, hang on. And I can tell you, when I was a brand new beginner 40 odd years ago, and I was first introduced to the Dwad technique, it was one of my first epiphanies in astrology, the kind that makes you just stop and say, oh my God. So maybe there'll be some of you that have that OMG moment today. If not, I hope you still find it useful, practical. After all, you have them, everyone has them in their charts. And I'm curious too as to how many people have ever heard of that term, Dwad. So if you could pop that into the chat, I will attempt to answer your questions as they come up. So here we go. This first slide, the Dwad, astrology's hidden influencers. I purposely chose the word influencers, thinking about today's social media and how that phrase has perhaps different meaning, but I don't think so when we get into what the Dwad's function is. Those people who might post a restaurant or a great vacation destination, where to buy clothes at a deal, all those people that might be putting out there what they choose or avoid can and often does have influence over us. Influencers don't always have the greatest reputation in the world. A lot of people may not want to admit that they have been influenced. And I also thought, as I was preparing this webinar, some of the older phrases that might apply to today's webinar, that it used to be back in the day when this was definitely a man's world, but the phrase, behind every successful man, there is a woman. So, and another phrase that popped up was, the devil made me do it. So somewhere in our psyche, there is this underneath it all type of where, but for the fact, but for this, that wouldn't have happened. And I think that's when we are talking about the Dwad. Now, speaking of that word Dwad, this is where we can get into some controversy. And I'm hoping today that we clear that up. Dwad, more than likely, derived from Dwadasamsa, which is a Vedic, a Hindu term that literally means 1/12th part. There are other spellings of Dwad that you see on your screen, D-U-A-D. Both mean the same thing in terms of Dwad, Dwads, just how you spell it. But in terms of its meaning as far as an astrology technique, there's more than one technique that is often referred to as a Dwad. The Dwadasamsa system was developed well into like 1st century CE and even earlier, more than likely. And it has to do with the Vargas, or the divisions of a chart that deal with family ancestry, karma. The sun represented the karma of the father, moon, the mother, the ascendant from the family. So there were different uses when it came to Dwadasamsa than the Western astrologers were using for its version of dividing the sign into 12 parts, because that's what we're really doing. We're taking each sign that is 30 degrees and dividing it 12 times. When you divide 30 by 12, you get 2.5 degrees each. This term would have been used by Hellenistic astrologers as dodecatomoria. Doesn't that just roll off your tongue? Dodecatomoria. No wonder modern days we're calling it Dwad. But dodecatomoria was definitely the term, the Greek word for 12. You have do and then deca equals 12. Tomoria equals the parts. So here is the term that discussed a system, a technique widely. Its heyday was in Hellenistic times. They likely we're working off of a similar system developed in Babylonian times. There is no empirical proof that the system of dividing a chart into 12 was either directly a Hindu tradition or Babylonian. We see it both surfacing about the same time, but two different uses, one for karma and dharma, and one for character analysis to fine tune, as well as timing techniques. And I'm going to show you all about that. So the roots, as I mentioned before, are both practiced in Babylonian and then Vedic Hindu in those early years. This slide, when I created it and looked at it, and I thought, of course, AI helped me, that these two gentlemen, when you look at them, there are definitely similarities in their facial features. One on the left is representing the Hindu, the Vedic, and on the right is more the Babylonian. And this would be, I think, a perfect illustration of how the Dwads can work in the chart. Subtle, yet very real in how there's facial features, but you can definitely tell the difference. There's something going on here. And that's what the Dwads are all about, is what you don't necessarily see right off the bat. It's hidden, the influence underneath the sun sign or the moon sign or whatever. The Dwads were never, ever used as a standalone technique. They were always an overlay. And let me repeat again, when I'm using the word Dwad here, unless I state otherwise, unless I forget, that Dwad is going to refer to the Dodecatomoria system. That's derived from the Hellenistic times through the use of and practice by Hellenistic astrologers like Vedius Valens, Manalus, and quite a few others, that this was a go-to system that they used in addition to other techniques. The difference now, to clarify it once and for all, that the Dodecatomoria has its traditions and roots in Hellenistic and indeed possibly Babylonian times, a technique for subdividing the 30-degree signs into 12 parts to fine-tune and give nuance to the personality and also timing techniques. And then the Dwadasamsa, which you'll see spelled different ways, but that's the Sanskrit term for the ancestral chart division, each sign into 12 parts. And then our modern word for sometimes both systems, but we have to clarify then when we are talking about a system. And sometimes I think with astrologers, we might say, oh, have you heard of the Dwad? If you've been exposed to the Hindu version, then that's what I think you see what we're talking about, is we have to clarify then what use you are applying it to. Now, Dwads over the centuries have ebbed and flowed like a lot of things. So we already discussed how it first probably appeared in early Babylonia. We know it did. And then as well at the same time with early Hindu and Vedic astrologers. Widely used in the Hellenistic times. Medieval times, now we're starting to see the use of Dwads decline, mainly because other types of techniques were becoming more and more popular. And so that it just use it or lose it. I say that's more than likely what happened. Yet it still was in the writings of such famous astrologers as Abu Mashar and the other, I'm not going to pronounce these names right, but I hope you, Alcibiades and Albidi. I've got to cover something up on my screen so I can do justice to these famous astrologers. In the Renaissance period, almost all but forgotten. There now we have these new practices where the dignities and the aspects and houses. And so if I've lost some of our beginner students, fear not, we are not going to lose you in the process of how useful these Dwads can be for you. Modern, now the term Dwad comes back into being. We're going to talk more about that later in the webinar with what that technique looks like today versus what it looked like way back when. And that's where our yes, no, maybe, and never say never game comes into play. But the term Dwad comes back, and more than likely it was slang, something that's what we do. We like to give slang to words that might otherwise not have the same meaning, or we've lost track of the same meaning. So beginners especially, the idea that you take every sign, which is 30 degrees, and you divide it into 12 parts. When you divide the sign into 12 parts and create these 12 Dwads, let's call them Dwads, and we are talking the Dodecatemoria system, you are going to have the first Dwad be associated with that parent sign. So if it's the Aries sign we're talking about, the first Dwad is Aries. Then the next Dwad goes in zodiacal order: Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, and so on. So that 2.5 degrees each is going to create that 30-degree sign. We have wheels within wheels. And it's a reflection of the as above, so below, and the micro representing the macro. Now, this part is very important, I think, no matter what level you might be, because just looking at the sign and this beautiful rainbow pattern here of the 12 signs within a sign, well, what are we really looking for then with the Dwads? Why, what's going on? What we're looking for is the planet, a planet that is going to be placed in any given sign in a specific Dwad. So hopefully you're with me so far. That we want to see is a planet in Aries in the Taurus Dwad. Is it in the Virgo Dwad? What is the influence from that? What is the influence of a planet in the sign of Aries ruled by Mars, but might be in that part of Aries that is Cancer, ruled by the moon? There's an influence there. And that's what the Hellenistic astrologers were very well aware of and wanted to use that in their interpretations. To continue with, and on this slide, and I hope you notice that at the lower right, where depending on how you might visualize 2.5 degrees, I wrote them both out. So 2 degrees, 30 minutes is 2.5 degrees each. So these numbers sometimes can get confusing. And also, yes, it's 30 degrees in any given sign, but that last little bit of the last Dwad is going to be at 29.59. So when you're at 0, when a planet might be right at 0 of another sign, or this particular sign, they're at the very beginning. Lori, did you have a question?
I'm following the chat box and there was a bit of confusion. So I'm going to go back to the question. So a Capricorn starts with Saturn?
With Capricorn.
And not always with the first sign of the zodiac. It depends on the
parent sign. Perfect timing. Let me show you in this example. So if we have a Taurus sign, the first Dwad is Taurus. And the last Dwad is there for Pisces. And if we have a Gemini sign, our first Dwad is Gemini. So easy peasy on that one. I hope that clears that question up.
It seems like so, but if I see that the question comes back, I will let you know.
Okay. This glyph or graph may help clear that up entirely because it's all here. That you see the 12 signs on the left, and then going across, you see the, oh, I just saw a heart. Thank you. The top row then is showing you where this is. So you can just zero in. Let's say you are Gemini at 22.22, and you go right to where that is. Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. Glad I cleared that up. Now, I hope some of you are already starting to think that, whoa, my sun is at 2 or 3 or 5 something in a sign, and now let's go see who's influencing that. What sign, what Dwad is it in, and what planet rules that? So are you a Capricorn sun in a Gemini Dwad with Mercury ruler? Now Mercury is helping Saturn, helping influence your Saturn ruler. So perhaps that means that your conversations, your communications are much more organized. You perhaps instead of being so matter of fact, perhaps you can weave in some more variety with that Mercury, with that playfulness, with that Mercury Dwad. Hope that example there makes sense. Click, click, click. I could just feel that how people might be going, oh my gosh, this is some good stuff here. I want to get back to where I'm okay, so I want everybody, and we can come back to this chart, but this is probably one of our main tools to use as we go forward into this presentation. Now, one thing that I do when I'm, say, just without my computer or anything to calculate, we can, without relying on a computer, kind of get an idea of where a planet's Dwad position is by that degree number. You know that if it's that first day of a sign that they're born on the cusp, that's going to be that Dwad that's matching that sun sign. Aries, Aries, Taurus, Taurus, Gemini, Gemini, etc. When you get into the 15 degrees, that should be an easy jump. Now you're going to the exact opposite sign. 15 degrees is going to be that Libra Dwad for an Aries, or a Scorpio for Taurus, or a Sagittarius for Gemini. And for your beginners who may, and I love beginners, I teach beginning, sometimes just getting that zodiacal order it takes a while. And do what you can to get that memorized early on. Same thing for these glyphs too. If you're looking at this grid and it's all Greek, no, no offense, you need to get to know these symbols early on. It's a language. This is our alphabet. So with this, I'm trying to help you quickly get to that 2.5 degree to 5 is this. 5 to 7.5 is that. Does that make sense, that if we're breaking things down that you can easily kind of jump and calculate, but I still use my fingers, trust me. I'm going back and forth, or I get a pen and pencil out and I'm going, because these Dwads really do make a difference in our interpretations. The Dwads, the calculation, because with the planet, the natal planet, let's use this example, say the sun is at 24 degrees 12 minutes Aquarius. The ancients had to calculate it. It's only recently, as we know, that we've got the computers and the software programs that can now calculate for us. But I do want you to understand this concept. You don't have to know it, but to understand the concept of the math that was involved, that the first thing that our ancients had to do was to convert the minutes to decimals. They did this by dividing it by the 60 minutes. So 12 divided by 60 gave you 20. And you would add that to the degree. And if your brain is going, you do not need to know this. I'm just kind of showing you the difficulty or the process. Then that 20 added to the 24, that new number is multiplied by 12. And now you get a number of 290.40. That's a longitude number. Now, because it's an Aquarius sun, you take that 290 and you add it to the first degree of Aquarius, and you come up with 590.40. And anything over 360 degrees, you're going to subtract that number to get the net number of 230.40. On the longitude scale, that is 20.40 Scorpio. You don't have to remember, I'm repeating it just one more time. The Aquarius sun, Dwad, the sun's Dwad, is at 20.40 Scorpio. So this Aquarius sun, ruled by Saturn, has an influence underneath of Scorpio and Mars. So you might say about this person, Vidius Valens might say, this steadfast yet avant-garde, futuristic thinker is motivated by a hidden passion and drive that might not otherwise be noticed by a casual observer. So you have that perhaps tendency that not all Aquarians share unless they're at 22.5 to 25 degrees, and now bring in that Scorpio Martian influence. And I'm getting some thumbs up on that. So I hope you're with me. So we don't have to know this, but I think conceptually that what we're doing is finding where the natal planet's placement is in a single sign in the big picture. That sign has all 12 signs in it. So by virtue of the factor of the ratio, so to speak, the percentage of within that 30 degrees, which really is 360 degrees if you're taking the sign that has all 12 signs, now you're plotting it as if this is the Scorpio part of Aquarius, or this is the Taurus part of Aquarius. This is the middle part of Aquarius. AstroSeek to the rescue. There's the QR code on there, and I think Lori is dropping the URL into the chat box for you to copy and paste. Now, here is where you can see on the screen that it says Dodecatomoria Dwadasamsa D12 chart. So this is where, wait a minute, am I getting a Dwadasamsa chart, or am I getting, these two charts are going to be the same, but the technique that you're using is going to be different, whether you're looking for the karma, the dharma from your family ancestry versus your own chart, staying put right where it is with the personality traits and potential timing triggers. For those of you who have solar fire, I recommend this is where you go to get your Dodecatomoria, your Dwad charts. And there's a few steps to that versus this one is pretty darn self-explanatory when you go in. And I want to just give you these simple steps. That first you would cast your natal chart. And then when you click on chart using your natal chart that's up on the screen, you're going to select Vedic. Then another window will open up and you are going to click Vedic 12 Dwadasamsa and you hit OK. Now another window pops up. Gosh, this is almost as confusing as that calculation that we just did. And you hit no. Why? Because it's going to ask you, don't you want to convert your natal chart to a Vedic chart first? No. And this is where that just hit no. Just trust mama, just hit no. And your chart will generate beautifully. You will see now a chart that is going to show you, in the example of Aquarius sun, and now it will generate a chart to show you the sun Dwad as in Scorpio. Yes, Lori.
Would you mind going to the previous slide? I think some people wanted to grab that QR code.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, we can.
So all of you who need the QR code, please take a screenshot so you have it. And remember that we'll have the replay on YouTube, so you'll be able to see these slides again.
Thank you. Good reminder. I love AstroSeek. It has so many real charts that are so hard to find, and they just make it easy. They just cut right through. So why not just use AstroSeek and leave that alone and not go through all those solar fire steps? I'll tell you why. Solar fire is sometimes complicated. I still, but it allows you to do a bi-wheel. And that, when it comes to Dwads, you're going to want, if you can, have that bi-wheel capability. For some of you beginners, you may not be used to looking at a bi-wheel. And I made it simple as simple can be so that you can understand that the bi-wheel in this case, it's going to have the inner wheel, the inside wheel, be the natal, and then the outer will be the Dwad. So in solar fire, you can create this bi-wheel and have the Dwads. Oh, and I love seeing those hearts. Thank you. When you guys are getting it, that helps me. In this case, we see that the natal sun was 0 degrees, 7 minutes. Hello, vernal equinox. And because it's in that first 2.5 degrees of Aries, we see that the sun's Dwad placement is at 1.29 Aries. Talk about Aries on steroids. Do you think this person is a go-getter, a driver, competitive, and all of that? So you would naturally know that with that added influence, Mars, we've got somebody who's exceptional in that category. So, okay, they were born later in the time of Aries season, let's say 15 degrees or give or take. So now our wheel is looking like this. Now, doesn't that give another flavor entirely? So we're looking at that Aries natal sun at 15 degrees. But there is that Dwad out there in Libra land, and that influence might be that this person, yes, they are definitely that leadership material, but perhaps more inclined to partner with other people, to listen and learn from other people. I'm not saying Aries are thick-headed at all that, but you can see where that Libra energy, that Venus energy is going to soften and bring another nuance that really now you start to see where Hellenistic astrologers would have said, this makes Aries sun signs different depending on when they're born. Thank you for those thumbs up things. I'm going to show you those charts side by side, just so that, especially for the beginners, that you're getting a little more used to how this may appear as you're going forward with comparing your chart or looking at someone else's chart. The real big point I want to make is that the glyph for the natal sun is the same glyph as the sun's Dwad. God, can you imagine if that was a different glyph? No way. No way. So easy peasy on that one. I don't know if there's any questions so far, but I think we're ready for our first example. And I picked the most obscure person I could think of so that we could guess. Just kidding. Just kidding. We have Lady Gaga. Yes, let's hear it for Gaga. She is born with Aries sun at 7.37. And if you're counting on your fingers and just your fingers, this gives her that Cancer Dwad. All right. She was born March 28, 9:53 a.m. in New York City. So keeping with our inner chart is the natal. You can see her sun's placed in the 11th house, 7 degrees Aries. Now her sun's Dwad in Cancer in the 2nd house. Easy peasy. For this example with Lady Gaga, I also brought in Mars into play. And we see that Mars natally is in Capricorn. It's exalted in Capricorn. It's at an early degree, 0 degrees Capricorn. That gives her a Capricorn Mars Dwad. Exalted on top of exalted. This woman who is cutting edge, pioneering, and sexually charged content in her performances and lyrics and the music, and yet this Cancer Sun Dwad that brings that emotional intensity and that connection with her fans, as well as that maternal instinct. Isn't she not referred to as Mother Monster to her little monsters? Her references in her music to her father, her grandfather, very familiar. Do you think it would be the same if her son's Dwad was in Leo or Aries or any other sign? I think Lady Gaga's, just these 2 planets alone, really show the influence of a Dwad. And this woman is such a workaholic, such a performer, driven. I want to show you, just especially for our beginners, but our advanced astrologers as well, that when we have the full chart for Lady Gaga, I'm sorry, I was going to animate on this one, and I forgot that this chart had that. Forgive me. But that's where we wanted to illustrate that Mars. So with the traditional planets, and the Hellenistic astrologers would have only used the traditional planets and only used the ascendant. When it comes to the game we're going to play later, yes, no, maybe, is, well, why can't we use them now? So later we'll discuss that. But I did want you to see and appreciate the way that a bi-wheel could look with just those traditional planets and the ascendant at play. And in Solar Fire, you can certainly select the planets that you want to display and add or subtract as you will. So I don't have, and I wonder just if there's anybody in our audience today that wants to make any comment, wants to take a stab at any of the placements, either natally and by Dwad, something that you might see and that you want to share.
You can pop it in the chat box. Since you are pausing here, Patricia, there is a question. This is in the chat box, not Q&A. It's about
Okay.
the settings in AstroSeek.
Okay. The settings in AstroSeek, you should be able to just go to that link, and then it's going to ask you to enter your natal birth information. So the day you were born, the time, the place, you hit calculate, and boom, the chart you get is going to be the Dwad, all the Dwad
Okay.
placements. Yeah.
So there's someone asking or saying that they have to select Egyptian, Ptolemy, Chaldean. Are they in the wrong place, or is that something you have to select?
Oh, and that URL is always, I would say Ptolemy, but and you may have to click whole signs as well.
Someone else has added that the default is Egyptian.
Okay.
If that has any bearing.
And you can cross-reference that. And I apologize that I wouldn't know. Rather than make a guess, that's something that I would have to clarify. So by the time that this tape goes out, that we should be able to clarify that setting and provide a link with directions that's going to work for you. Thank you for catching that.
Yeah, and we'll put that in the replay email. There's a few people who are responding to your question. Do you want to read them in the chat box, or do you want me to read them to you?
Yes, if you would, Lori, read them.
Okay. I see Elise says her Dwad ascendant right on her natal Venus makes her very magnetic, I guess, and underlines her direct and fiery way to express love.
That's excellent observation.
And then Anna says, so she has Mercury voice singing in the Dwads of the 5th house of creativity and artist. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think those too.
We're getting it. We're seeing it. You guys, you're on your way. You are on your way. And isn't this fun? I just think this is like a new discovery of yourself, that so often other people will see traits in us that we don't. And I think this one is a real objective eye opener for us, that we can't, it's there. And so you may start to find that you're looking for that, and seeing the subtleties that now explain something that you might have thought was maybe a transit or a progression or something like that. And that you can call on that energy. I think that's the most exciting part, to have that little talk with your inner influencer and say, okay, I know you're in there.
You have a few questions in the question box, and we will definitely get to those. I'm just going to go back to the chat, because there's a question about how you got the Capricorn. How did you get Capricorn since her son's Dwad is Cancer? So there's a question about that, if you don't mind answering that.
So she's Aries sun, and her at 7 degrees 37 seconds. So she is over the 7.5 degrees in terms of the first Dwad in Aries would be Aries. And then at 2.5, it would be Taurus. And then at 5, it would be Gemini. And at 7.5, it would be Cancer. And she's at 7.37. So she's in that Cancer Dwad. I don't understand the Capricorn with the Mars. Thank you. So her Mars at 0 degrees Capricorn is in that first Dwad of Capricorn. Capricorn, Capricorn. If it was a 2.5 degree Capricorn Mars, she would be in the Aquarian Dwad. So remember, each sign, the first Dwad is the same as the parent sign. Okay, I got a thumbs up on that. And this may be a webinar that you need to listen to a second time. and then even have your own chart in front of you. Let's move on. The next slide I want to see in advance in case there's something I want to say before it comes up. Oh, this is where it gets juicy. Because now, previously we were talking about natal chart interpretations, characteristics, nuances that come into play. What if transits can trigger a Dwad and add some extra oomph that might not otherwise be there? We're going to have an example, Lady Gaga. First, yes, the answer is yes. These transits can and do seem to trigger the Dwads, our micro influences, so that we're now bringing that secondary sign energy, that secondary signs ruler into play. This also is going to be not just bringing in a new sign energy, but the elements, the modality of fixed, mutable, and cardinal. And that planet's placement, the Dwad's placement, brings that house into play, does it not? There's a lot of layers going on. And for beginners, this may be like, hey, I'm just going to settle for a sign, you know, that my sun's sign and my sun's Dwad, I can layer those. At another time, you might be able to layer in that additional house influence. You want to compare your sun's sign, let's say Aries, stay with Lady Gaga, and her Cancer Dwad. Are they contrasting? Are they compatible? Are they supportive? So these are cardinal energies that definitely initiate, get things done, go getter, and then possible hidden timing cues. So now we'll look at Lady Gaga and a pivotal day for her in 2008. And that's this chart. I have some animation to go with this. So on June 20, 2008, she was relatively unknown, certainly on the world scene. She was performing and happened to be scheduled at, I want to say this first thing. So we have Sun transiting, just coming into Cancer. Okay, there it is. Now we are dealing with the tri-wheel. So hang on to your hats. Inner wheel is still natal. The middle wheel now is the Dwad, and the transiting is outside. We are going to keep this simple, simple. And I have some arrows to help guide the way and keep you on track. So outside wheel, the transits. We have Cancer Sun transiting, hitting her Cancer Dwad on June 20, 2028. That also triggers her opposition of Mars in Capricorn, both natally, and Mars Dwad in Capricorn. And this concert was very instrumental in her breaking out onto national recognition for her performance, especially her rendition of Just Dance. You can see that with the trigger of the transiting Sun in Cancer, triggering her Sun's Dwad in Cancer, activating her Mars in Capricorn, then forming a T-square with her natal Sun. This is such a powerful lineup for her that this concert really did make a difference in her career, bar none. The song Just Dance after this concert, and it soon was on the top 100 Billboard, and she was #1 by January 2009, which, by the way, transiting Sun would have been over her natal Capricorn Mars and Capricorn Dwad for Mars. Very interesting timing. And one thing that I think is so important about this 2008 performance is that things didn't happen like overnight. But certainly this concert was the catalyst. This was the one that made the difference. And the one funny thing that I think bears mentioning is this Cancer transiting sun, activating her sun's Dwad in Cancer. And here this performance is at Raging Waters in San Dimas, California. So I thought that was kind of funny, kind of cute. That natal 11th house sun, and look at the position and the stardom, the fame, the connection that she has with her audience. Now, this was just prior to it being really official about her being Mother Monster, the Little Monsters, but it was all about this same time, that early 2009, all of that gelled and really came into play. So I hope you like this example and that there are instances in your life that you looked and the transits just weren't, like, that was a big deal and I don't see it in my chart. I don't, what's up? This might be another place to look, to investigate. Let's see, our next chart. I thought you would enjoy the Lady Gaga. I sure did. She's one of my faves. Okay, we are going to now jump to an example of why Hellenistic astrologers loved the Dwads. And that is when it comes to comparing charts of people that are pretty close in birthday, time, etc. That's twins, twinsies. As astrologers, every once in a while we get that. The twins, and pretty much everything is so close, so exact, but just 4 minutes can make a difference. And that's where the Dwads come in. And boy, do they come in. So for the example I'm going to share today, I hope you all know at least something about them. I did look for twins that I thought everybody knows. Did you know Elvis was a twin? His brother died soon after he was born, just really minutes. So sadly, but I thought that was significant, that here is someone who, with their chart and their lives past, what might we find in looking at the twin born close, I think 20 minutes apart, 30, something like that. The other famous people, Ashton Kutcher has a twin, the Ashley twins, but all of these people, they don't really have the verifiable, so I really searched long and hard, and yay, I came up with, okay, the Astra twins, yeah, Ophira and Tali Idut. And if you've ever had a chance to see them, they are so identical, 4 minutes apart. Tali is the older one, born at 10 a.m., and Ophira just 4 minutes later. Otherwise, everything is identical. And yes, I'm using their entire chart to illustrate that. Their traditional planets. Look at every step of the way. There's the same sun and sun Dwad, etc., etc. Let me get my notes so I can give you some of the details on them. So both are Sagittarian with Capricorn rising and Scorpio sun. This would have been a dream for Vedius Valens, our Hellenistic astrologer rock star, where he would have seized on this example to show why these two born so close together could lead different lives. He leaned on the ascendant variations, but also lot activations and Dwads to explain these subtle divergences. So he might have described their Sagittarius sun as fiery and bold and truth-seeking natures. Capricorn ascendant, serious, ambitious, disciplined, and constantly striving. And then there's Scorpio moon. There's intensity of feeling, secrecy, magnetism, and strong instinctive will. And he might say that they share the same general fate for striving for eminence and driven by passion and desire. So with the difference of 4 minutes, we see that Ophira's ascendant is in Taurus, conjunct her Jupiter Dwad. I'm not going to focus so much on that, but it bears noting in the 5th house. So ascendant in Capricorn, but it's Dwad in Taurus. There's Venus. So that Capricorn and Venus influence, Saturn and Venus. Now, Tally, the older one, her ascendant is in Aries and the 4th house. Keeping in mind, we are using whole sign charts, so that naturally would adjust when we're going from a different sign into a different house. And her ascendant Dwad is not conjunct Jupiter. For you beginners, I don't expect you to necessarily hang on that you missed something. It just bears repeating that these 4 minutes make a big difference as astrologers for us to be able to interpret certainly timing as well as personality traits. Some of these differences can be shown on this screen, where the ascendant compared is showing the ascendant in Taurus, Venus ruler, 5th house for Ophira. So that's secretly Venusian, pleasure-seeking, artistic and charming, delight in children. Ophira is the only one with children. She has a stepdaughter as well as a biological daughter. Now, Tally is the Aries, the martial energy underneath that Capricorn ascendant, more bold and restless, still strong ties to family in that 4th house, and a desire to establish authority there. She does not have children. The one point that I will make, because I really respect what they do, they have really established a big, huge following. When I see them on their podcasts, Tally seems to have much more of a different speaking style, perhaps more direct, even the tone compared to Ophira, that is a much softer tone. So look for that. And if you haven't seen them, look at how YouTube has certainly some videos that you can go back and just look at those subtle differences. And voila, what is it? 4 minutes. There you go. Were there any questions on the twins charts?
I don't see any at this moment. There are many other general questions, but
Okay.
I'm not seeing anything on that specific.
And we'll get that. So I think now it's almost time, not for all of the questions, but the yes, no, maybe, and never say never, because we are talking about an ancient technique that had its roots where only traditional planets were used and only signs were used to interpret the Dwads, and a lot of other things that only. So as we fast forward 2,000 plus years, what are modern astrologers doing? I saved this for this part of the webinar, that some people may construe the Dwad system, the Dodecatemoria system, the same as the 12th harmonic, which was developed in the 20th century by John Addy, followed up by David Hamblin, who wrote this is a new theory that they brought into play about the 12th harmonic. And I think that when we hear the word 12, someone saying, oh, you divide it into 12 parts, so you do it, as soon as we think this one size fits all, and that is a no. No, when we're talking 12th harmonic, it's a whole different system, a whole different interpretation. And I'm not going to speak to what this technique involves or all of that, but some of the difference are here on this screen. Hopefully you're more familiar with the dodecatomoria and its roots, its method of dividing the signs into 12 parts, 2.5 degrees each. It always starts with the anchor sign, for which Dwad is first. The hidden traits that are an overlay to the natal chart, to discuss personality and timing and even rectification. And then the philosophy being the zodiac in miniature. Whereas the 12th harmonic is multiplying a natal planet's position. In other words, if you are born 24 degrees, 12 minutes, you take that number pure and you multiply it by 12. And it's pure math. There's no parent anchor sign. You're going to come up with a number that's a longitudinal number, and it's a whole different theory. If you're interested, that's the name of the astrologers that invented it, and it's known as the 12th harmonic, and you can find out and then join Toastmasters and have your own webinar in the near future. Another modern astrologer that introduced, and this was the book that I had my eureka moment of, oh my God. And this book was published in the mid-70s called The 144 Doors of the Zodiac. After all, you divide 360 by 12, you get 144. And the Dwad technique, as she's introducing that word, no doubt she might have picked it up from another source, but here's where we're starting to see this anchored into modern terminology about this ancient use of the dodecatomoria system. So here's a book that you might want to research. I don't think it's in print anymore. I do think it's on Amazon. A nice, fun, fast read. Now here's where, and the author's name, Thurza Escobar. Let me go back so I can show you. Yeah, you pronounce that, Thurza Escobar. And she brought in more than what the Hellenistic astrologers would have done. In my yes, no, maybe, and never say never, she's talking about introducing the houses into this technique. And I say, why not? Now, thankfully, because we don't want this to get any more complicated, especially for our beginner students, the house divisions are always 1 through 12 in any given sign. I don't care if it's Aries, Taurus, Gemini. It's the first Dwad is an undertone of first house energy and theme. So no wonder those 0 and 1 degree, 2 degree sun signs have that energy of a me first. And I don't mean that in a negative way, that this a very strong focus on their self-development, on representing that. And then as we go through that beautiful spectrum in each sign of all 12 signs and all 12 houses, we can really begin to pick up on some fun nuances, especially every month when the sun is traveling through 30 degrees in our charts, and we can see where it's going to click over a sign, or I'm sorry, a planet, and that planet's Dwad by sign and house. But here's where I think it can get confusing, and this is under that no part. We're not really, and I say never, and I'm sorry, I'm thinking out loud here, and I'm kind of like, why not? That in the example of, say, Lady Gaga, and her sun is at 7 degrees Aries. Her Dwad is in Cancer at 0 degrees or 1 degree Cancer. So here she has that Cancer Dwad first house. So definitely that's me. This is me, baby. This is as raw as it gets, and emotion, and really self-expressive. But it's a layer that I wanted you to be able to look at. So depending on your level and your interest, this might be something worth adding to your research on Dwads. Again, so nice and easy that it's not going to matter what sign it is that you are going in numerical order. With that said, this slide is giving us our 3 main points that you want to look at in a planet placement of what is the main parent sign. So for Lady Gaga, that's Aries. She's born in Aries. What is that energy going on? And then what sign the Dwad is in? How does that color it? How does her Cancer Dwad color it? And then what Dwad house does she channel that through? And in her case, her Cancer Sun Dwad in the first house, it's all her, baby, 100%. So it begs the question, should we use houses? Should we use aspects with the Dwads? So the yes, no, maybe. Modern astrologers are going to say go for it with that pro part of it of, yeah, you're going to get more refined characteristics if you're looking at the houses and even the aspects within it. Definitely more geared for intermediate and advanced astrologers. I would suggest, but not, never say never, just the 5 major aspects. I think that's good enough. Now the cons, and just like what I'm expressing here, it could be that it just gets so complicated. We're rabbit holing here. We're going into some weeds, but go as far as you want. Timing techniques and Dwads, progressions, certainly. And this, oh, I love this because with progressions, planets can take forever to move through a sign, okay? The sun is 30 years in a sign, but 2.5 years in a Dwad. Oh, how about the moon? 2.5 years through a sign, and but every 5 months in a new Dwad. Boy, talk about subtleties and some nuances. This is gangbuster stuff for progressions that I really think are worth looking at for especially some of those years where it doesn't seem like the planets are really moving into anything significant. And you know that in a whole year, something's got to be happening. That's where I point to the Dwads for that they would bring into play not only the new sign, but the new house, the new modality, the new element, and all of those things. And how about comparing that Dwad placement ruler to the natal ruler? Are they compatible? Are they helping perhaps, and this is true for perfections, I'll get to that chart, where let's say a planet that is in detriment, and now he moves into a Dwad position where he's now exalted. Do you think that helps? I would say, yeah, sign me up. Annual perfections, widely used by Hellenistic astrologers. Vidius Valens would have used Dwads in this system. For beginners, if you haven't learned perfections, it is one of the easiest techniques and so effective. I urge you to sign up. Kepler has great classes on that and the solar returns. So with this one, the Dwads definitely come into play, and Vidius Valens was a major user of that. Can you imagine that in a perfection, for those of you who understand that system, that on your birthday and a new, more than likely new Time Lord takes place, that you want to also look at where that Time Lord is on your birthday in the solar return chart and what Dwad that's in, and then compare it to its natal Dwad placement. That should show you that year ahead and how perhaps there's some more resources available or there's some challenges there that weren't necessarily there before. Highly recommend using that. Zodiacal releasing, yes, Vidius Valens was a huge proponent of that and activating the Dwads. I'm not going to get into how that would all work, but for those of you who use zodiacal releasing, this one's for you as well. That's really going to help explain these releasing periods between two terms. And then horary. Horary, as we know it today, wasn't really around in Hellenistic times, but certainly, yes, you can use Dwads in horary. It might flavor the significator considerably with that microsign flavor, especially if there's some ulterior motives or some information that you're not really, they're not sharing with you, some unseen motives. It can sharpen the description of people and places and absolutely modify the dignity, the debilitating factors, and refine timing. And here's, maybe I saved the best one for last. Compatibility and Dwads. Isn't that one reason why we all studied astrology? I'm not saying it's the only reason, but the compatibility, how many times as astrologers have we said, I'm not supposed to get along with that sign or that, there must be something else. Look to the Dwads, because this is where you can find those compatibility factors where the Venus is matching the in all of these categories of life, at the workplace, in love relationships, family, friendship, teamwork, synastry. So definitely take a peek at where these Dwads are as to how some things might be mitigated if there are some challenges in a relationship at work, and why you are better suited to work alongside or be in relationship with certain folks. And that means we're time for questions. And I hope you found this useful.
Fantastic, Patricia. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lots of great feedback here and some questions. I'll start at the beginning.
All right.
How do you reconcile natal charts when you use Placidus and then whole signs for Dwads? Do you use both to do the interpretation as an overlay?
I think that goes under the yes, no, maybe. And I'm going to ask you to repeat the question again. I was getting out of my slideshow. I think I understood it, but I want to make sure.
How do you reconcile natal charts when you use Placidus and then whole signs for Dwads? Do you use both to do the interpretation as an overlay?
I think I would start with whole signs. And then if you still have questions, go for the Placidus. It can reinforce or make you question even more. And that example with the Astro twins was really such a great example that if there was a question, and very often with twins, there is a question as to the exact time. So Vidius Valens would have said, all right, I've got a Capricorn rising, and they should have that lean, tall structure, that Capricorn look. But here they are coming in with more of a Cancer profile or something, and yet their Dwad is showing in Gemini. You go, I think I'm going to move it forward and see what clicks. And so this is where it can absolutely make that difference and help you reconcile. And how many times have we all done readings where someone says, nope, it was AM, and it's PM. Now the chart makes sense. So that's where you really want to look. I think the Ascendant is probably one of the most important driving factors in reconcile. Great question.
Okay, and an add-on to that one, would you do a tri-wheel with natal whole sign, Dwad, and Placidus?
Sure. Yeah, why not?
You know what?
It's Saturday night.
Is this where deacons get its name from as well?
No, but I'm so glad you asked that question, because that does come into play. We don't want to forget the deacons. This talk today definitely about the Dwads, but they definitely have their influence as well. But I think the Dwads are actually more significant than the decans.
Okay, thank you. How do you reconcile using a sidereal tool in a tropical chart?
That is a question I don't know that my brains can wrap around. That is a fabulous question. Well, does the person asking have, sometimes we ask a question that we are already guessing or have the answer to. I don't know.
Well, we'll see if she adds more and go on to the next one. If
Thank you.
Dwad is same as moon sign opposite sun sign, does it increase the opposition?
Yeah, I would imagine that it does, very much so.
Okay.
And I would think that that's exaggerated or emphasized in a transit, certainly in a progression.
Great.
Another great question.
Do the Dwads only work for planets or for the angles as well?
This is another yes, no, maybe, that because this technique originated back in the time when the outer planets were not yet discovered and the angles were not in use other than the ascendant. So the traditional, especially the Hellenistic, who were very experimental, who were very open to trying new techniques, I think they would have looked at that. Why wouldn't you? And that's, I think, the power of that sign that has the 12 signs in it, that there's an energy grid. I kind of look at it as walking onto a floor, that each color has that energy and that vibration, and you step onto it and you are certainly engaged in those energies. There has to be something there.
Great, thank you. What are the sources for using transits with Dwads? Is this your method, or do some of the traditional texts?
Definitely traditional. Yes, very much in play for timing techniques. Yes.
Do you remember who?
Primarily, I was looking up the sources on Vidius Valens. To me, he is the go-to for Hellenistic and the techniques that he found valuable. So that was where I was sourcing the majority of my material.
Okay, thank you. This question always, right? What orb do you recommend?
I knew it. I did a whole I thought, no, they won't ask. And I'm sorry, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. This is always, I did a speech on the orb and all of this. Okay, this goes into the category of never say never. I am not, and I think when it comes to the Lady Gaga example about the 2008 concert, her breakout, and that things weren't exactly like sitting on it, but they were sure approaching. And I do think there's something about energies that when they're approaching. And I failed to mention something really important, and I didn't have a chart for it. Lady Gaga and her Mars Capricorn natal and Dwad, she works herself. Some people may say, oh, give me Mars and Capricorn. Of course, I'm double Capricorn, so that's just like, oh, I didn't get it there. But she, in 2013, injured herself so badly, she had to have hip surgery. She left in mid-tour her, what is it? I can't remember the name of the tour. Something about the something ball. And she didn't know if she was ever going to come back to performing. She just overworked her hip. I mean, she had tears and holes in her hip, very painful surgery. So that Capricorn Mars with that Dwad, you got to learn when to say no. There's a limit. So that exalted moniker is not always a sign that it's all going to go well. The timing for that would also be something to look at. I'm almost forgetting the question, but I did want to bring that point up with her Mars natally and the Dwad.
Thank you. So Dwads, I assume the answer is yes here, but I'll let you answer it. Dwads can only be applicable in multiple births, only if you have the exact times. Correct.
Only if you have the exact time.
Yeah, if people
yeah,
didn't know what time they were born, you wouldn't really be
yeah, yeah. If you're guessing, but if you've got assumptions, and I think astrologers a lot of times have intuition or the person, their physical appearance or some other factors. But I think the answer is yes. You want the exact time, of course.
When you're doing a chart, you're doing tropical or sidereal?
Tropical.
And you stated that you preferred the whole sign house system, right?
Yes, I do. I learned on Placidus. I get it. And I only switched over to whole signs about 3 or 4 years ago. Real short story. It was because my north and south nodes never made sense where they were in the Placidus chart by house. Just absolutely. And then when whole signs, it was bingo, spot on. Now that doesn't happen for every single person, but I was already on the fence. It's a system that nice. I can go back and forth to Placidus, and very often I do want to look at the Placidus, and thankfully I can read Placidus. And I'm going to say never that the Dwad system wouldn't work in Placidus. Of course it would by sign, and who knows if it wouldn't work by house too. I haven't tried it, but in theory, why not?
Why not? Did you mention which bounds you prefer, Egyptian, Ptolemy, or Chaldean?
Oh, I am not the strongest in either. I've looked at both, and usually I tend towards Ptolemy, but the Egyptian I find that valid too. I just don't work with them very much.
Okay. Um, as a follow-up question to the moon sign. Oh, I didn't ask you that question. Let me just go back to it. Oh, maybe I did. Did I ask you a question about moon sign opposite sun?
Yes.
Oh, okay. As a follow-up question to the moon sign opposite sun and Dwad is same as moon. If it increases the opposition, then if it's a T-square, it would increase the efficiency of the T-square?
I think so. Sure, why not? That Lady Gaga example was, I think that was, yeah. That's a simple yes.
Yeah, okay. I think I've answered. Sorry, I'm just tracking through
Oh, no worries.
There's
These
some
are,
requests here, but I don't know that we have time for more demonstrations. But there is somebody who's interested in knowing how to cast the bi-wheel on AstroSeek. And
that I've never tried because I just go, man, I never have time to fool around. But to
yeah.
my knowledge, the little I've tried on AstroSeek, I haven't found that it does generate a bi-wheel. And maybe there's another, I'd love to know, because I would give that information out so that people without solar fire can still get that. Or another tip, and that's, Donna, you and I go back to that. When we drew our charts by hand, then when we were comparing, then everything just went outside that wheel. And I think that is so helpful to really anchor it in your mind, to see it by house placement and the angles and all of that. So use AstroSeek and then draw the Dwad placements on your natal chart, your printout of your natal chart. See what you get.
Great. There's some questions here that are really specific to individual charts. I'm not going to go through those, just in the essence of time. Alina is also saying that in the example of Lady Gaga, transits to her Dwad would occur every 12 months when the sun moves to Cancer. Yeah, so just a comment more than a question.
Yeah, I would think that that's circle that calendar for the summer solstice, baby. That's bingo land. That's lighting up your chart like a Christmas tree.
Yeah. Could you give an example on how to use the perfections with Dwads?
Let's say, because Lady Gaga in 2008, she was 22, and her 11th house Aries sun, that was her perfection year. So the sun would have been the time lord. So now you're wanting to look at that Cancer Dwad as being extra active, and that being ruled by the sun, or yes, that being ruled by the moon. Now you want to see the moon's position in the solar return chart and where that is coming into play. What sign is it in? What phase is it in? And what's its Dwad doing? So you want to compare natal to the Dwad placement for your time lord, as well as its ruling planet for its Dwad. In this case, Lady Gaga's Aries sun with a Cancer Dwad moon ruler. So you'd want to bring the moon.
You're holding
Italy
it in your mind way better than I'd be able to.
I
Good for you.
I know. This is why I use my fingers.
Yeah. So there's a few there were some other comments about people who were wanting to look at things again. So I just encourage you to look when it shows up on the YouTube channel. You'll be able to pause it wherever you want to and look at it. And for those of you who were a little bit confused, just listen to it again. And of course, we have included Patricia's website information. I'm sure if you wanted to reach out to her, she would be happy to do a reading for you or tutor you or any of those things. So Patricia, we really appreciate you doing this webinar for us.
Donna,
you did
thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, no, you did a great job. It's no wonder you're a Toastmasters winner.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I had big steps to follow. You really led the way, Donna. Your vision about helping astrologers with their presentation skills. Thank you for that. And Lori, thank you for all you do with Kepler. And this is such a wonderful gift that you give everybody, these webinars and all of your other offerings. So
thank you so much, Patricia. And thank you for being a part of it. And thank you to all of our audience members for joining in and your active engagement. It's really appreciated. All of the support that you bring us is always appreciated. We're going to end the recording now.